Welcome to Unity of the Triangle. We are having another Sunday service, and I'm here with Anna Quintana. I want to ask her how her personality is handling this time of social distancing.
Well, when you're asking me personality, I can give you one response. If I go I would say spiritually proper, might give you something else.
I'm asking for personality.
Personality. Really. Not well.
Yeah. So today we're talking about personality, and the difference between Anna and me is Anna's personality is going not well, and my personality is going yippee. And so we see that really there's a large variation between us. And so today's topic is about trying to figure out what it is that is your growth place based on your personality so that you might reveal your essence more clearly.
Wow, I'm so looking forward, and hopefully after listening to you, my personality will do better.
I don't know. Your personality is what it is.
Even if I don't hug, if I don't kiss, if I don't dance,
I don't think
I'll be happy.
If I could change you in one session of 20 minutes, just based on a conversation, I'm going to get the Nobel Prize.
Anyways, I'm sure it's going to be whatever we are meant to receive today, and we open our hearts to.
Yeah, and we don't want to change Anna. She's perfect like she is.
Bring it on, and thank you for tuning in this morning. May we enjoy and be together for this time.
We'll start with a prayer.
To continue the energy and the consciousness that we've been basking in this past week as we've been praying in this sanctuary, let us go into prayer now. The breath of the divine is in our breath. The heart of the divine is in our heart. The ever-present light of the divine is our light. Whatever is occurring in the outer physical world during periods of uncertainty, chaos, or challenges, nothing can diminish these truths or our light. We affirm and claim the goodness and love of the divine is inherent in each and every one of us, including the names in this prayer box. As we call forth the power of our spiritual resiliency, we meet every circumstance with the knowing that God is companioning and leading us in every situation, always. Nothing can disturb our peace when we return to our true divine identity and anchor into spirit. We return again and again to the truth of our being, resolute in our faith and open to renewed strength and purpose. Resilient, peaceful, and full of grace, we rest assured, and standing in faith, we affirm all is unfolding according to a divine plan and the highest truth. And so we let it be. Amen.
So now as we move into meditation, let us find a way to sit that's comfortable. Let the body relax, and we will also let the mind relax by paying attention to the breath. So it's a simple process of really bringing your attention just to how it feels to breathe in and to breathe out, to inhale and to exhale. So we breathe in and we breathe out. And we notice we're breathing in and we notice we're breathing out and how it feels. And to that dance of watching the breath, we add this next step of relaxation. We let the breath continue and our attention to be on that, but also relax the body. Relax the body from the top of the head, down the face and the back of the head, down the neck and the shoulders, down the chest, the belly, back, the hips, the legs, the knees, calves, and the feet. Let the body relax as we pay attention to our breath. Imagine each breath is just radiating relaxation out in all directions to all parts of the body. Let the eyes become very relaxed. And the sinuses become relaxed. And the lungs relaxed. And finally now, let us bring our attention to our hearts with our breath so that we imagine, we sense, or we feel that the breath is coming into and out of the center of the chest. So that the heart energy center, called the heart chakra in the center of the body, is activated. Now imagine if your heart could stay completely open and would find no need to protect itself or to be more than simply a presence. Imagine you were that presence all the time. And all the things we had learned to do to protect ourselves were merely optional and not habits. And we could go through life with our hearts open, spontaneous, free, and appropriate. As we continue to breathe into and out of our hearts, let us contemplate this freedom of being open-hearted, undefended, spontaneous, and clear as we sit together in holy silence.
This day our daily bread, you said you would supply all my needs according to your riches. I have but to ask, and I shall receive. this day.
This morning, I would like to talk about personality, and I would like to set the context for personality by placing it in the pantheon of who we are as a human being. Of course, for most of us, or most of society, I think, we think of ourselves as our personalities. It's the front and center thing. Maybe it's the body we think we are, but certainly the body and the personality seems to occupy so much of our self-identity that just saying that you're more than that is kind of a challenge to the practice way we are. But I would like to say that the personality is only what's visible on the surface of, and it has a role, but it is not all of us. Behind the personality is something more fundamental. Let's call it the soul. So you have a soul behind the personality. This soul is something that's greater than, I think, this lifetime. Essentially, it's a big being. It's a big presence. It's something that has more history than you can compact into your number of years on earth in this lifetime. And so it is more than the personality. And behind that is something even grander, which is the spirit. And the spirit is what is connected with all that is. It is the part of us that is oneness with everything. And some people have described this relationship of spirit, soul, and personality by saying that essentially the spirit is like the ocean, or it is like water, all water. Perhaps it might be a better way of saying it. It's like all water on earth is the spirit. But then the lake that is a particle of that all water, that's your soul. And the soul is, I mean, it's something to be recognized, but it's not as big as the spirit. And then on the surface of the lake, there are waves, and that's your personality. And without revealing too much, I think we can speculate without too much doubt that we have had more than one life. That we have had more than one life, and that each one of those lives are contributing to the unfolding of the soul. And the thing that is we get to work on in this lifetime the most is really our personality. And so the personality, this small part of all that we are, is the dynamic focus of much of our attention. And it is helpful, while it might be the focus of much of our attention, we do not let it be the totality of our identity. Because essentially, in my simple way of putting things, what we identify is essentially shows our level of spiritual development. So if we identify as the personality, then our development is focused there. And if we identify as the soul, our focus is there. And if we identify as the essence of who we are, the spirit, the oneness of ourselves, then we are essentially changing our identity as we advance in our perception of ourselves. Because it's easy to believe you are a personality because the world will tell you that. It's a little more involved to get that you're a soul and to realize that you are the presence itself. This is really the goal, in my opinion, of spiritual development. And so, while it might be natural to be locked up in being a soul, it is not sufficient or locked up in being a personality, it's not sufficient. It's even not enough to be just a soul. It is to recognize who we really are as the presence of the divine in this place. That, I think, is the goal, to be the presence in a particular place. Now let's talk about how we come to have a personality. Let's assume, and it's not actually completely true in my opinion, that babies come in without a lot of programming. While I think this is somewhat true, I think it's complicated by the fact that babies have always had a soul, so they've always had something that they carried forward into this life. And in many ways, they may have chosen this life in some parts with the characters in their life story, their parents, their close relatives, the people who will betray them, the people who will love them. Perhaps they had a plan before they came into this life. But let's just admit what we do know is that essentially that children have something, but they are influenced enormously in the early life of their time on earth, and they're largely influenced by their parents. So their parents are the ones who are molding, to some degree, this somewhat molded, but not very molded being. They are molding it into a personality in this lifetime. And that personality that they're molding it into largely reflect something of the parents. So if the parents were missing something in their development, then it's quite often they can't give that to their children, and so then the children are missing it in their development. And so from generation to generation it can happen. So if you think about your parents are perfect except for one thing, then the one thing that you are likely to be missing in this lifetime would be what they were missing. And so this is how we begin to have the initial wounding of this baby that is trying to grow into an adult, this initial something missing, if not really wounding, something's missing in their life. This is how it forms. And it forms early, and the child feels like it needs to compensate. And so it begins to develop a personality structure that in some way will compensate for what was missing. This has been described as essentially putting like a cast on a broken bone. And it covers the wound or the missing in such a way that it can heal. But if you never outgrow that cast, then it's a really awkward life to have a cast on your whole life. And many personalities, most personalities, I would say, get stuck as this frozen protection, this frozen casing of what's missing. And so instead of actually coming to full healing, we just learned how to function in this life. Sometimes our functioning is really quite good, sometimes it's not. Quite frankly, sometimes our compensation is not so beautiful. And we pay the price as human beings for those deficiencies in the limit of how much we can enjoy life, limit of our ability to achieve, limit of our ability to relate to other people. This becomes a limiting factor, our personality, rather than just an expressing factor. And the more wounds or missings that we have, of course, the more difficult it becomes to be fully expressive of who you are. So coming back to the original theory that we are, at our base, we are spirit, we're not even just souls, but we're the totality of it, this undifferentiated, powerful, incredibly loving and effective being, or consciousness, maybe not even a being, just this potential. This is who we are in the largest aspect. And it is being now filtered through our soul, and most importantly at this moment through our personality. And if we have missings, we then are confining the amount of light that can shine through us, the amount of presence, the amount of spirit, the amount of oneness that can come through us. And so our spiritual work is to identify with the presence, but to get there, for most of us, we need to uncover or take off this cast before we can actually see the presence. We essentially have to do personality work to get to the spirit. We need to uncover that which we have been trying to protect and to experience it clearly so that we can have a more clear experience of the divine which is in us and as us. One of the things that has struck me as a good story about this is this story of a man who was driving on a highway in the rain at night. And the rain had caused a big flooding, and the flooding had torn out a bridge and had left a 40-foot drop from the bridge into the river. And he was able to stop his car just before he went off the ledge. And so, recognizing that this would be a threat to everybody else that would come behind him, he ran back down the road and started waving at traffic and trying to stop everyone who would go by. The story goes that as he was waving, a group of teenage boys drove by, and instead of taking his warning, or even recognizing that he was warning, they thought he was just trying to flag them down for help. And being of the mood, they flipped him the bird and sped up and drove past him, and then drove immediately off the bridge to their death. This is the problem with habitual personality traits, is that if we cannot pay attention to what's actually happening in this life because we're habituated to our own personality traits, we endanger ourselves and others in the process. We limit ourselves and others as to what we can accomplish. And our task in this life is really to outgrow our own personality, to be able to see what it is and outgrow it naturally. Now, one thing about the spirit or the presence is that given a chance, it will provide transformation for each of us. Largely what we have is this stupidity that these boys demonstrated on the bridge, not knowing what's really going on. We continue to act in the same old ways, and unfortunately, we get the same old results. And so if we can get smart enough to recognize what we're actually doing, what our personality is like, then we have a way of liberating ourselves from those habits. And the presence, the divine, will actually do much of the transformation for us. We mostly have to be willing to see what it is that we're doing and to catch ourselves in the moment of that activity and to put the brakes on when necessary so that we and the people with us might be safe or have a better outcome. This is the spiritual work of someone who's still engaged in the world, is to use the experiences of this world to recognize what they are hiding so that they can reveal it themselves. And in so doing, start a new pattern, a new set of possibilities that allows the presence of the divine to shine through more clearly. So a book that has been helping me with this way of seeing this has been this book that a friend of mine had asked me to read years ago, really. And like a lot of books I'm asked to read, I don't do it right away. I just let it mold on the shelf for a while. And I would have probably not done it, except he asked me how my reading was going, and I thought, well, I better do some. And as I began to read this book, which is called The Wisdom of the Enneagram, and it's by Rizzo and Hudson, as I began to read this book, it began to dawn on me, I have a personality type that they could describe, which probably in an earlier year I would have resisted actually being labeled. I'm sure that's part of my personality. But I had investigated the Enneagram probably 3 or 4 or 5 times previous to this, but it never had like quite dawned on me quite so much. And one of the things that dawned on me as I was doing this is that we have been talking to you over the last few months as we've been in social isolation, that this is an incredible time to go deeper. But one of the things I noticed is to go deeper, you need to, it's helpful at least to have tools to get in there, to go deeper, to recognize what you haven't been recognizing before. I think one of the things that happened to me that caused this Enneagram book to be of more value to me than it had been was that I have been in social isolation, and there is a quieting of my outer personality enough that I can begin to see more of my innate patterns. I'm doing my innate patterns because I have very little interaction with people, and so I'm just doing me over and over again. And then it becomes obvious because I can't blame anything I'm doing on anybody else. It's just me. And perhaps that's happening for you. And if that is happening for you, if maybe you're having intense desires to be with other people, or you're enjoying being alone way more than you think is average, you might be able to recognize yourself in the series of 9 different personality types that they put forth in this book. And these personality types are not so that you become boxed in, but that you recognize the box of personality you are already in. And so doing, seeing your habitual habits and how that interacts with other people in their own habitual habits, that becomes an insight into the very nature of what's happening for you. And so it's not such a big mystery what's happening. And this insight allows the presence of the divine to begin to modify it, because now you've come into awareness. It begins to, you are in essence inviting the presence to do its transformational work, because now you are clear about what's actually happening. Like many forms of awakening, most of what happens, most of our work is being willing to know what's going on. Our willingness, our effort put into recognizing what's happening for us is really the biggest part of the lift that we have to do. That the presence comes in when we are willing and begins to work with us. As I've said in another talk this year, it's not hard to believe that the presence is looking for people to help us. If you consider what the presence has to work with is like a forest of people asleep. And one tall tree grows up into awareness of what it's actually doing. It's easy to pick out that one who's doing the work and to come be in communion and in partnership with that. And so I ask you to consider this possibility that you may want to investigate your personality type. And the personality type might give you some clue about your habits. And those habits, recognizing those habits as you're doing them, might give you the freedom to not do them by habit. That opening, into that comes the presence that allows something new to happen, a more complete expression of the divine itself. That's a pretty cool thing to have happen. And it would make sense that since I believe we're going to be in this state of social isolation for months more, I could be wrong, but it does seem like it's going to be that way, this would be a fantastic way to spend some of the time paying attention to what our habits are within this time of social isolation, when our personalities are being highlighted against a simpler backdrop of being more or less alone than we have been. This will be a time of deepening and a time of awakening and a time of self-acceptance. If you actually get that all that you have been doing has been in compensation for something that you already have, but just didn't believe you did, then I think the exploration really is not one of discovering what you're missing, but discovering who you really are, that you actually have always had all that you ever needed. It has just been hidden, essentially, by our personality. If you think about it, the great spirit, the one presence, your own inner self is complete, total, and always has been, and really couldn't be otherwise. And no matter what has happened to the soul or to the personality, it stands in the fullness of itself. And so to be able to be more in access of that, by willing to be clearer about how we become habituated in the world, this would be healing and would be happiness. And essentially the theory is that all we have become in the world was to hide where we felt inadequate, essentially. All our problems are really in hiding the truth from ourselves that we are whole and complete. You know, that famous statement by Marianne Williamson is that we are not frightened by our inadequacies, we are frightened by the greatness of who we are. And this is what I hope we will be able to come to in this time of social isolation, is that we will take the clarity that comes by looking at ourselves more clearly and seeing our patterns and giving Spirit space enough to come and shine through us by us recognizing and admitting to ourselves how we might be limiting it. And then to let it move through us by catching ourselves and putting on brakes before we do the same thing over again, hoping for a different result. This is spiritual work. It may not be without its own struggle or inner embarrassment, but this would be worth it, wouldn't it? To come out of this shiny, prettier than we ever were before, because we are not limiting the expression of the divine as much as we had been, but instead we're making more and more space for it. This is a sign of hope. There must be a pony in here somewhere. Let this be what it is, that you free yourself from your habits by recognizing what it is you're doing. And in so doing, let that presence shine through you brighter and brighter. My prayers are with you. May this be a beautiful time. May you find great healing and happiness through self-exploration. Namaste.
My, well, only time will tell when stars fall from the sky. But the burden isn't light. This, my body, bag of sand, reminds me that I am just a man. My, only time will song. And I know my purpose is my song. To hear it and sing it true. I have nothing more nor less to do. My, well, well, only time will tell. When heavens open up and start to cry, well, well, my, well, well, my, well, 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 my, well, well,
Unity of the Triangle has been so blessed over the last year by the service that so many of you gave to this church and are giving to this church, and also your donations. I want to thank you all for that generosity. We are essentially a volunteer donation organization, and out of that, we try our best to bring something of value to everyone and to remind them as much as possible that they are more than their bodies or their minds, but they are the deep, existent presence of the divine taking a particular form. But I do want to remind you that we do continue to need your contributions of time, talent, and treasure, and please keep them going, because this does make all this possible. One day we will be back together again. We will be singing and holding hands and probably even hugging. So let's keep this possibility alive. Thank you so much for your contributions. I look forward to seeing you in person. I don't know when, but sometime soon. Thank you.
This is our time to say goodbye, but before we actually do, I would like to say that I know I got it somehow at the end during the love offering time. You were emotional because we do miss our people, and they get to see us, but we don't necessarily get to see them. However, I must remind everybody that right after the 11 o'clock service, we do come in, all ministers, Reverend Mimi, Neusom, and myself. We show up there just to chat with you for a while. It's this fellowship time, cyber fellowship time, just like remember in the fellowship hall, but we do it virtually. You can just go to the calendar, click there, and boom, will pop up. And then on the September 27th, we'll have our congregational meeting that way. So we would love to see you show up, at least just to say hi. And we get to share some love, just to honor my personality, okay? Just do it for me.
Yeah, do it for Anna, if not for yourself, you know. Anna, it's been great. It's been a fun Sunday. We look forward to seeing you next week, and thank you for tuning in.
God bless and have a wonderful week.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as Creator, family all are we. Let us walk with our family in perfect harmony.
light of God surrounds us.
I am the light of God.
The love of God enfolds us.
I am the love of God.
The power of God protects us.
I am the power of God.
And the presence of God watches over us.
I am the presence of God.
Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.